Okay, so no calculator review. Let's start out with one. This one isn't really an exponent with no calc, but it kind of gets, it's along the same lines here. This is the type of question you might get. So let's do this. What if we had, and don't blurt it out. I want you guys to write this down. So write this down with me, right? So -1 times -3 times -4. So don't blurt it out if you know it. I want you guys to see if you can solve this one. Okay, so on this one, guys, well, really, with these negatives in here, this is really a question like that's just trying to figure out if you know the rules for, like, you know, 2 negatives makes a positive. You know, like, is this thing going to come out negative or positive? Because if the question was without the negatives, if it was just 1 times 3 times 4, that would be 12, right? Because 1 times 3 is 3, and then 3 times 4 is 12, right? So I know this is going to be 12. But the question is it going to be negative or is it going to be positive, right? So, what do you guys think? Yeah?
It would be negative because a negative and a negative make a positive, and then a positive and a negative make a negative.
Right, yeah, so it's going to come out negative, and the way we know that is because -1 times -3, negative times a negative gives us a positive. So I know that that's going to be +3. And then +3 times -4, if it was written like this now, right? Positive times a negative, things coming out negative, right? So that's -12. Now I did that where I like did each like that, right? But the other thing we could have done, do you guys see the pattern here that they're all negatives here, and there's 3 of them, right? That this thing is definitely going to come out negative. If there was another negative, let's say like -2 or something, that's going to come out positive. Let's say like -4, negative, -3. Right, so you can see that pattern that's starting to emerge there, right? Yeah, well, it doesn't. Yeah. Well, we could. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys one more of those quickly here, and then we'll move on. So let's say it was, let's say we had. Okay. Let's do this one. What would that one be equal to? So write it out and find an answer for me. Before even looking at this one, right? Before like actually figuring out what the number is, what do you guys think this thing's coming out to? Negative or positive? Positive. I know that. How do I know that? Well, there are 1, 2 negatives in this thing, right? At some point, I'm going to go a negative times a negative. This thing's going to come out positive. So you can kind of see, like, just kind of look at it and tell whether, like, what it's going to come out as. So then the question, like, I know it's going to be positive something. So this question is really just what is 3 times 5 times 2? So 3 times 5 is 15 times 2 is 30. You could do that in any order you wanted. You could have went 3 times 2 is 6 times 5 is 30. It doesn't matter in the order of these, right? All right. Well, like when you're multiplying. It would if there was adding or subtracting in there. All right, so let's do another one. Let's do, so number 3 here. I'm going to make it tougher. Let's go 18 squared. And we have to figure this out without a calculator. Okay, so give this one a go. This is the key. This really is 18 times 18, right? You guys have been doing this since grade 6.
Yes.
No, we haven't.
Okay, so like we said, 18 squared. First part of this question is actually just like understanding that 18... Okay, so the key here is that 18 squared really means 18 times 18, right? So that's where your brain has to go first. So, okay, so the question is really, what is 18 times 18? And you realize, okay, that's kind of a bigger number. I can't just really do that one in my head. So you could just say, okay, what is 18? And then write it over itself, right? There's this method. So 18 times 18. All right, do you guys remember the... like how the general way this looked? This was 8 times 8. I'll let you do the next one. I just want to make sure everyone kind of sees it. 8 times 8 and then 8 times 1, right? It's just kind of that part of it. And then we're going to go like 1 times 8 and 1 times 1. That's kind of the general pattern that we're following here. So let's, yeah, we'll do that one too, yeah. So we're going to go 8 times 8. So 8 times 8 is 64. And And I know that might be the problem for some people, like right off the bat, right? It's just 4. And do you guys see the way I wrote this down?
Yeah.
So 8 times 8 is 64, so you'd write down the 4. And then the 6 goes up to the top. All right, to the next one.
Okay, but what do you do with this thing?
Well, we'll get to that. So then we'll go, so then we're going to go 8 times 1, right? Just doing this next one. So 8 times 1 is 8. And then plus 6. That's what happens there. We're going to add 6. So 8 times 1 is 8, plus 6 is 14. So we just write down 14.
Oh, I'm an idiot.
Okay, so that's step number 1. Now, this 6, by the way, we can just like ignore now, right? That this isn't going to carry over. The 6 is kind of done with. So now we're going to go 1 times 8, and then 1 times 1.
Oh, you gotta put a 0.
Right, good. So you are going to have to put a 0 in that spot. Do you guys remember why we put the 0 in that spot?
Because the one that you're doing is in the 10th place.
Yeah, yeah. We're in the 10th spot now, right? So put the 0 there. So if I go 1 times 8 here, just remember what I'm really doing. This is 10 times 8 is really what I'm doing here. That's why the 0 makes sense. But anyway, 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. And then what do I do with my numbers I found there? Now we add them. 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. So I put the 2 down and I bring a 1 up. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. All right, let's do another one, guys. Same type of question. I want to kind of hammer this one home. So let's do 26 squared. Turn that on. So let's say we had a question like this. What if we had 3 minus 12? So don't say anything. I want you guys to, I want you just to figure this one out. I'm kind of leading up to something else here. So, okay, so
Figure it out. What do you mean?
so guys, we end up getting -9 out of this, and you can think about the way I had it on my number line, right? That it was 3. And then we went 9, and I just kept on saying you just go 12 to the left, right? And you'd end up at -9. Do you guys kind of see the pattern that happens here too, though? That 3 minus 12 ended up giving you -9. What do you get if you go 12 minus 3?
That's what I said. That's positive 9, so you just flip it. Bigger 9.
Yeah, yeah. So if I had a bigger number like 123 minus 144, right? It's kind of like backwards. Well, I know that thing's coming out negative, right? Because I'm at 123, I'm going 144 to the left, right? But where am I going to end up, right? So what you can do as a strategy here, why don't we just write this as 144 minus 123 and figure out where we're at here. So do you guys remember how to do this one when we subtract big numbers? All right, let's see it. So here, you know what? Just make life a little harder. Let's go like this. I'm going to make that instead 126.
Oh, bro.
Okay. So if we're subtracting these, what it is if we're just going to go one at a time. It'll be 4 minus 6, though. That's kind of weird. So 4 minus 6 I can't really do, right? Do you guys know what I got to do so I can subtract these? We're going to borrow from the side, the place beside it. So we're going to cross this out, and I need this to be 14. Okay? We're going to take away from this, and this will become 3. We're going to borrow from the one beside it.
Do you guys remember the...
Okay, let's just keep going. Okay, so 14. So now we can do this question, right? This becomes 14 minus 6. So what is 14 minus 6? 8, yeah. So 8. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. 0. So it's 18. So is my answer 18? No, because yeah, it was the other way around, right? It's really negative 18. So that's how we can do these ones where...
How'd you get a negative?
Well, because I knew that this was 126 minus 144, right? So it's like I was on the right side of the number line at 126, and if I subtract more than I have, I'm into negative territory.
What happens when there's like...
Okay, so let's do number... I'll make this official. Let's do number 5. And this would be a typical type of a question. So let's say that we have...
We did number 5. Yeah.
Oh, did we? Let's make this official and make it number 6. All right, so let's say that we had 4 to the power of 3 minus 2 to the power of 2. Actually, no, other way around. 2 to the power of 2 minus 4 to the power of 3. So with this question, guys, we had to remember how to take a power. I think that was like the problem that everyone was having there, was what it meant. When we write down 2 to the power of 2, this one's like the one case where it's going to work out either way. 2 to the power of 2 is 2 times 2, right? Like 2 times itself twice, so that's going to be 4. Now this is the one, 4 to the power of 3. Is that 12? No, it's not 12, right? Because this is not 4 times 3. 4 to the power of 3. We got to remind ourselves. This really means 4 times 4 times 4. Okay, now, so now this one, guys, like where I think some people got stuck on this step was they're like, okay, 4 times 4, got it, 16, and then they were like, oh no, 16 times 4. I can't really think of this one. So one way you could do this, right? If you weren't sure about it, we could kind of split it up, because you're like, okay, it's like I've got to have 16 4 times, right? And maybe I can't do that one straight away in my head, but can you go 16 times 2? What's 16 times 2? 32, so I'm halfway there. So another 32. I'm at 64 now. Yeah? Does that kind of make sense? So you can do that in your head, but if you couldn't do that, if you didn't like that one either, 16 over 4, and you can multiply them this way. So 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. Right? So we can always get there with, like, figure out the method that you like. All right, so this is really 4 minus 64. Okay, so just to kind of get my bearings on what this would be, like I know, so I'm starting at 4 and I'm going 64 to the left. So I'm way into the negative territory, right? But let's do our little method there. This is going to be the same thing as just going 64 minus 4. You probably don't need to write it out in this one, eh? 64 minus 4 is really just 60. So this was really negative, though. Negative 60. Right? 4 minus 64. Okay, number 7. Let's do.
Yes, please.
All right, if you're watching the video, we just dropped the 3 to make it easier for a first step here. So we do inside the brackets first. But that negative 1 to the power of 0, let's just like even remove this for a second. Just take that out of there and move it down here. That would really be negative 1 to the power of 0. What is that? That's negative 1. That's not 1 because it's to the power of 0. This was really 1 to the power of 0, and that negative is just tacked on the front. So it's, again, it's like that whole like tricky bracket situation, like where the brackets are. If this would have been negative, here, if the brackets would have looked like this, whoop, back up here. If the brackets would have been here, then things would have been different. Then we would have had negative 1 to the power of 0 would have been 1, and then it would have been negative. Yeah. So yeah, careful for the tricky brackets. So we had, so doing inside here, negative times a negative was a positive, and 1 to the power of 0, so that's going to be just 1. Minus 2 to the power of 2 is 4. And then that's all squared. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And then squared. And then the only thing that... Yeah, so negative 3 squared is 9. Alright, let's do another one. And then I'm done. This will be the last question. And then I'm going to let you guys work. Should we make it really tough?
Yes.
Make a bunny grab it. Make sure that they have multiple colors.
Grab it. It's grab it season, boys. Wow.
What the heck is that?
See a 0.
It's a wow. There's the hidden zero.
No, but that's a multiplication.
Then there was more.
Isn't that a multiplication sign?
Not the one at the top.
The dot is
Yeah.
the one that's to the power of 0.
I like how he just has to write down numbers.
Yeah, well,
And you're like, no, this is that. Alright, so.
Jokey.
All right, do this one.
yeah, just do it quickly.
Okay, so yeah, quickly here. This is kind of the hard part of this one, right? Right here, like figuring out this whole like the power of 0 thing. Looking on the inside of the brackets here, this is now with the brackets on the outside of the 1 and then all of the power of 0. What would this part of it be? What is that?
So instead of like the zero.
So in this case, this will be negative 1 to the power of 0, and anything to the power of 0 is 1, positive 1. So that all became 1. So this is really negative 3 times 1. And then minus, well, let's fix this right now too. This one inside the brackets here, right? That's really negative and then 3 to the power of 1. So that's really just negative 3 still, right? And then we've got a negative times a negative. That is positive 3. This is all still to the power of 3. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Plus 3 to the power of 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0 to the power of 3. And then 0 to the power of 3 means 0 times 0 times 0. That's still just 0.